Good morning. Okay, so we've been working on graphing inequalities. Now we're going to start working on solving inequalities by adding and subtracting. So if you felt comfortable in our equations unit, I think you're going to do very well with solving inequalities because we're going to do the exact same steps that we did with solving equations. All right, so our first one says solve and graph. Y minus 6 is greater than negative 7. So we're going to not find our equal sign, but we're going to find our inequality sign and draw our mirror. We're going to do the inverse operation. So we're still trying to get that y all by itself. So we have to get rid of negative 6. So I'm going to add 6 to the left and add 6 to the right. So y is greater than negative 7 plus 6 is negative 1. Okay, so we've done the first part. We just solved it. We haven't graphed it. Now, you do not have to substitute and check with an inequality because there are an infinite number of solutions that could replace y. So after you solve an inequality, all you have to do then is graph it. So remember, the first step to graphing is we're going to find negative 1 and put a circle. We're going to look at the direction in which greater than, the arrow greater than goes. So that would be this arrow down here to the right. So we're going to darken that line. Going to the right, we're going to darken the arrow. Now we have to decide if it's going to be an open or closed circle. This one is going to stay open because notice that y has to be greater than negative 1, and negative 1 is not greater than negative 1. So the very first value that could make that true would be 0. So negative 1 is going to be open because it is not a solution for y. So we're finished with that one. Let's try b minus 3 8/10 is less than or equal to 1 7/10. So you're going to find your inequality sign, draw your mirror, do the inverse operation. So the opposite of negative 3 8/10 is positive 3 8/10. So these are going to cancel. We have b is less than or equal to, drop your decimal, 5 5/10. Put a box around your solution. Now we need to graph. So I'm going to find 5 5/10. So that would be 5 1/2. I'm going to zoom in here. So 5 1/2 would be right there. Look at the way that your less than sign points. That points to the left. So we're going to darken this arrow down here to the left. We're going to fill in all of these numbers to the left of 5 1/2. We're going to darken the arrow. Now we're going to decide if that's going to be open or closed. It's going to be closed because we can include 5 1/2 as a solution. If I substitute 5 5/10 for b, is it true that 5 5/10 is less than or equal to, or is a very important word here, less than or equal to 5 1/2? Yes. So that's going to be a closed circle, and that tells the person reading the graph that 5 1/2 is a possible solution for b. Number 3, 12 5/10 is greater than or equal to d plus 10. Now, the very first thing I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to rewrite that whole inequality, because you always have to have the variable on the left. So I'm going to take all of this and I'm going to flip it to the left side of my sign. And then I'm going to take my 12 5/10 and flip it to the right. Now, very important rule. When you flip your variable, you have to flip your sign so that it means the same thing. So since this is greater than or equal to, my sign is going to have to flip to less than or equal to. Notice how those are going in opposite directions. Alrighty, here we go. So draw your mirror. Inverse operation, subtract 10 from both sides. Cancel your 10s on the left. D is less than or equal to 2 5/10. And put a box around your solution for me. All right, it is time to graph. So put your circle on the line at 2 5/10. And look at the direction in which your arrow is pointing. It's pointing to the left. So we are going to darken the arrow to the left to show that all of these values that would work for D have to be equal to or less than 2 1/2. Now, since it's less than or equal to 2 1/2 is a possible solution, since 2 1/2 is less than or equal to 2 1/2. All right, first check to make sure that our variable's on the left, which it is. Draw your mirror. Now, the first thing I notice is that I'm going to have to subtract fractions. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make this 2 a 4. 2 times 2 is 4 and 1 times 2 is 2. So I need a common denominator if I'm going to subtract fractions. So the inverse operation for plus 3/4 is minus 3/4 on the left and minus 3/4 on the right. So my 3/4 on the left are going to cancel. So I have x is greater than. Now notice over here, I cannot subtract 3 from 2. So I'm going to borrow from the 1. That becomes a 0. And over here, I'm going to add 4/4. So 1 2/4 is equal to 6/4. So now I'm looking at the problem 6/4 minus 3/4. So 6/4 minus 3/4 is 3/4. X is greater than 3/4. It is time to graph. So 3/4 is going to be almost to the whole number 1. So put your circle on your number line. Next, check and see the direction of the arrow of greater than. That points to the right. So we're going to darken all of the values to the right of 3/4. And we're going to darken that line, that arrow. Since this is greater than, it means that x cannot be 3/4. X has to be greater than 3/4. So we are finished with that graph. Notice on this one, your variable is on the right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything on the right side and flip it to the left. And I'm going to take everything on the left and flip it to the right, negative 1/2. So now we've got to look at our sign. Our sign is greater than. You have to flip it to less than to keep that meaning consistent. Alrighty, it is time to solve, so draw your mirror. Remember, we're trying to get this z all by itself. Now I notice that I'm going to have to add fractions. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to rename this as negative 2/4. So I'm going to add 1/4 to the left and add 1/4 to the right. So z is less than. Now look what we've got. Negative 2/4 plus 1/4 would be negative 1/4. Z is less than negative 1/4. All right, so let's graph this one. Negative 1/4 is going to be just to the left of 0. And we are going to look at the arrow. So less than points to the left. So we're going to darken this line and darken this arrow. And we're finished. Yep, because that one's just less than. All right, so again, why are we learning how to solve and graph inequalities? To solve real problems. So this could be a real situation that has to be solved. A standard school bus can hold 74 passengers. 29 passengers have already boarded. Write and solve an inequality that represents the additional number of passengers that can board the bus. This will be a one-step inequality. Now remember, when we were setting up our own equations, I asked for you guys to define your variable using what the question was asking. So let's go back and see what we're trying to solve for. Write and solve an inequality that represents the additional number of passengers that can board the bus. So let x equal additional number of passengers. Okay, so think about these seats on the bus. The bus can hold 74 passengers. So can the bus hold 74? Yes. Can the bus hold less than 74? Yes. Can the bus hold more than 74? No. So the number of passengers could be equal to 74, or the number of passengers could also be less than 74. Now, how many passengers have already boarded? 29. So our inequality is going to read 29 plus x plus how many more people can board to be less than or equal to the 74 seats on the bus. So that inequality would say 29 plus x is less than or equal to 74. Okay, so let's figure out how many more people can board the bus. So we're going to draw our mirror, subtract 29 from the left, subtract 29 from the right. Cancel the 29s. $45 more people can board the bus. That would be your solution. All right, we made it to the last problem. A person can be no taller than 6 2/25 feet to become an astronaut pilot for NASA. Right now, your friend is 5 feet 9 inches tall, but he is still growing. Write and solve an inequality that represents how much your friend can grow and still meet the requirement. So we need to define our variable. We are going to define our variable by looking at what the question is asking. Write and solve an inequality that represents how much your friend can grow and still meet the requirement. Let x equal additional number of inches. How many more inches can your friend grow to not be too tall to be a pilot for NASA? Okay, so let's think about this. Can your friend be taller than 6 2/25 feet? Nope. It says no taller than. Can your friend be 6 2/25 feet? Yes. Can your friend be shorter than that? Yes. So your friend is already 5 feet 9 inches tall. Now I see on the right side we have a decimal, and on the left side that would be a fraction. So I'm going to do a little math problem. I know that there are 12 inches in a foot. So your friend is 5 feet and 9 out of 12 inches tall. That would reduce to 5 3/4. So that would be equal to 5.75. So I'm going to use decimals in this problem to make the math easier to solve. All right. So all I did was just converted my 5 feet 9 inches to 5 7/75 feet. So our inequality would say x plus 5 7/75 feet is less than or equal to 6 2/25 feet. How much more can your friend grow? So I'm going to come down here and solve that. How many more inches can my friend grow to add to the 5 7/75 feet that would be less than or equal to 6 2/25 feet? I'm going to draw the mirror, Subtract 5.75 from the left and the right. Cancel. X is less than or equal to, so that would be 0, borrow, 0.5. Okay, so my friend can only grow a ½ inch more in order to be a pilot for the airlines. All righty, so we are finished. Email me with any questions, please.